Welcome to Unit 1 Grammar. This is going to be a brief overview of the 9 parts of speech. Let's look at the colors in a rainbow. In order to be able to identify a rainbow, we have to have different elements of color combining themselves together to create that image. Well, that's what grammar is. Grammar is a way to be able to analyze sentences and identify patterns and structures, and we put a word to it so we can identify those same patterns and structure in other sentences. For grammar, we're figuring out how to put words together in order to make meaning. But grammar is not meaning, it's analyzing how the sentence is formed. The meaning of the words is what creates the meaning, but how do we put the words together to create a coherent thought is what we're talking about grammar. We're talking about the small elements of language. There are 9 parts of speech: nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, determiners, preposition, pronouns, conjunctions, and exclamations, also known as interjections. And I'll be reviewing each one individually. Nouns. A noun is a person, place, animal, or thing. These are words that state the different types of person, place, animal, or thing. You can classify nouns in countable and uncountable nouns. Countable nouns are the ones that you can actually put a number in front of them, where you can actually count. For example, you can count how many apples you ate. So you can say I had an apple, or I ate 2 apples, or I went to see a school, or I went to go see 3 schools. Uncountable nouns are nouns that you can't count. For example, rice. You can't really say how many pieces of rice you ate. So you just say, I had some rice. The same thing about sugar. We don't count 1 sugar, 2 sugars. And we're talking about 1 sugar or 2 sugar, we're talking about sugar grains. But we can count sugar packages. Uncountable nouns are always used in singular verbs. Nouns can be also formed in compound words. Compound words is when you join 2 nouns together. For example, honeymoon, basketball, sunflower, and keyhole. One of the things I tell students is to see if they can see 2 words in 1 word, and that's a compound word. Verbs. Verbs talks about the action of the sentence. It's the movement of the sentence. That's what verbs describe. Regular verbs are the verbs that follow the same pattern over and over again. These are the verbs that students can learn and just learn the pattern of the present, past, future. And once they learn the pattern and the structure, they can actually write the regular verbs correctly. Irregular verbs are the verbs that do not follow a pattern. So these are the verbs that students have to memorize in order for them to use it correctly. Adjectives. Adjectives are words that describe the noun. Most of the time, the adjectives are placed in front of the noun. However, in some cases, like the dog is pretty, the adjective is at the end of the to be verb. There are comparative and superlatives adjectives. These adjectives describe the noun, but it talks about which one is better or slower or the best. For example, the dog is faster than the elephant. Faster means that the dog can run at a quicker pace than the elephant. So comparative and superlative adjectives, they are able to give us more details about the noun. Adverbs. Adverbs describe the verb. Adverbs usually end in ly. So if you see an ly at the end of a word, it is an adverb. And adverbs can describe movement, feelings, and sounds that are related to the verb. Adverbs also describe frequency of the verb. So adverbs are also always, usually, normally, often, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, hardly ever, or never. These are also adverbs. Determiners. Determiners are tricky. These words come at the beginning of noun phrases. They tell us whether the noun phrase is specific or general. They can be articles, possessives, demonstratives, numerals, ordinals, or quantifiers. It's at the beginning of the sentence of the noun phrase. Those are considered also determinators, but they also can be classified as other parts of speech. It all depends where they're located in the sentence. Here are examples of determiners. An apple, an is a determiner, but it's also an article. Also, the reason why an is a determiner is because it's in front of the noun apple. The same thing as the word my house is your house. My is a determiner because it's in front of the word house. And your is a determiner because it's in front of the word house also. It describes the house. This is a Cambridge term that they use. I do not teach this because the determiners can also be other parts of speech, as you can see. However, you have to be able to identify them for the TKT test. Prepositions. Prepositions are words that talk about location, time, and place. These are the most difficult ones to teach non-native speakers because there's so many different ways of using them. The easiest preposition to teach is location, which, as you can see, you can use an image and a ball to talk about in, on, under, next to, behind, in front, and between. These are the prepositions that describe where things are located. The prepositions of time and place are more difficult to teach, but using this chart will help you with your students to teach the difference between how to use in, on, and at. You use in when you're talking about something in general, on when you're talking about something specific, and at when you want to be very, very specific. Pronouns. Pronouns is a word that replaces a noun in a sentence. Pronouns are used so that our language is not cumbersome with the same nouns being repeated over and over again in a paragraph. Here are some examples of pronouns: both, that, either, his, theirs, nobody, she, mine, who, myself, it. There are 4 different types of pronouns, which is the subject, the object, the adjective, and the possessive. It depends on how you're going to use them in the sentence, defines what type of pronoun they are. Conjunctions. Conjunctions are words that connect 2 sentences together to make one sentence. Also, the conjunctions are also known as connectors. Exclamations, and in the U.S., they're known as interjections. Exclamations is something you say or shout suddenly because of surprise, fear, pleasure. For example, hey, ouch, yeah, well, oh, hey, oh, hooray! Exclamations are also words that sound like the sound that one makes. For example, when you go into the water, you hear splash and the word is splash. Those are also exclamations. So they're actually the sound that you produce when you're doing something. That is not necessarily a word, but we create it into a word. This has been a very brief overview of the 9 parts of speech that TKT requires you to identify in sentences. We will be continue doing more exercises for you to be able to use these structures and identify them. But for now, that's all, folks.